Hi, this is Unlock the LSAT, and I'm going to refer to myself as the key. This first episode is just going to be about making the decision that you want to go to law school. In this type of political climate, things are a little bit uncertain when it comes to what's the point, depending on what side of the political sphere you're on. But it's still a worthwhile goal, and let's go ahead and talk about the best way to go ahead and start this journey. So first of all, you're deciding you're going to do this thing, but as far as timelines go, does it really need to be next year? For example, I'm recording this on August 18th, 2025. So hypothetically, maybe you are a senior and you're like, oh my goodness, what a great idea. I'll go ahead and start preparing as soon as I'm in my last classes for going into law school in 2026 in the fall. Sounds good. But depending on who you are, that might not be the best idea. And it's not about your capability. It is to some degree, but that's not really the full focus. Part of it is about the maturity. It's about timing. It's about making sure that you're going in with the best plan. Because do you want to take loans, or do you want to go for free, or mostly for free? These are some good questions. Do you want to go to a lower tier school where you'll have to work extra hard to even stay in there for more than a semester? Or do you want to have a bit of an easier time? I'm not saying that the upper schools will be a walk in the park. That's not necessarily the case. But we need to think about these things before even getting started. All right? So the LSAT, if you're completely new, is scored from a 120 to a 180, and 120 is the lowest possible score. That's pretty much not trying for a single question. You could even get better than a 120 by just putting random numbers most of the time. Not random numbers, but random letters. So if you just get a 120, there's something completely going off in general. But yeah, 120 is on the lower end, 180 is the highest possible score you can get. And pretty much everybody, I'm sure at some point, thinks that getting a 180 would be a well worth goal. Like, why wouldn't you want to be at the top? So, and then in the middle, I haven't checked lately, but about a 150 something is about the median of the average of where people tend to fall into. And a lot of people may try to just aim for that range. Some schools have a lower median, so one might hypothesize that by having a higher LSAT score, even within that lower range, might be able to give you a little bit of money or help you a significant chunk, even if you don't want to necessarily work harder for 160 or even higher for a more average school, not like a T14. Of course, for those, you're going to need more like a 170 above. That's not to say that people who score below aren't going to get what they're looking for in terms of just even getting their foot in the door, but you're leaving a lot more to chance, I'm just going to say. All right, so from here, you want to decide, do you want to barely try, barely put forth a significant effort? That's not to say that everybody that tries doesn't get out of the 140s, but you might want to take longer to see a score that's going to put you in a better standing in the future, and even just getting your foot in the door. So, do you want to have that lower score? Do you want to have a more average score or slightly above average, that's noble. Or do you want to have something more solid in the 160s? And what range in the 160s? And if you want to go higher, it starts to become tempting. Let's say hypothetically you get a 174. It's like, oh my goodness, I never knew that I could get into the 170s. And you get it. And then it's like, but I can get a 180 if I try a little bit harder. It's only 6 points, or not 6 points. Yeah, 6 points. Yeah, so that's going to be hard to pass up in your mind, but it's also going to be highly discouraging. And I will say that, at least for some people, it's really going to depend on the exact exam that you're getting on test day, whether or not you're able to deliver some high score like you're used to. Some of these tests will favor people who are stronger in certain question types than others, and who works better under test conditions, even health-wise. You know, you might be pretty well functioning with anxiety, but maybe you don't take medication. So you're getting something lower than maybe if you were to take an anxiety medication you would be getting, but maybe you don't want to take medicine. So there's just like a whole lot of different things that are going on when you might not get the score that you're looking for. So one thing to do is to set something as your own personal record, your personal goal, and then continue to go from there. Okay, so we've talked about deciding to go to law school, thinking about your timeline, thinking about your ideal score, and now we want to figure out when should you plan to take the actual test. So it's good to at least give yourself 6 months. You might need 9 months, you might need 12 months. Things could happen in your life because you might not be that person that's able to spend all your time studying every single day, every single week for this exam. Maybe your life will change along the way and it'll look on paper like you spent 4 years, but maybe you got some experience working in a law firm. You got some experience working at a courthouse or something like that. So be a little bit flexible in this pursuit. And we also do have some alternatives nowadays with the JD Next as an option, and also the GRE. And I think if you consider like the schools that aren't ABA accredited, which is not an ideal thing, unless you're maybe in Los Angeles or California in general, where they have some workarounds. And then I also forgot the apprenticeship. So that's a whole different ball game altogether, but that's kind of like a roundabout way to get to become a lawyer without actually having your Juris Doc. But back to what I was saying in terms of your timeline, you might end up taking a bit longer than a straight line through, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to sometimes take your time and just relax and enjoy each step of the way, enjoy your journey. All right, so now that we've gotten the test day scheduling kind of out of the way, let's talk about how you're gonna pay for this. I can't remember the exact new cost of the LSAT right now, but I know it did just go up a few dollars again. So it might be about $240, $250, rounding about there. But there are fee waivers. At least right now they have 2 different tiers the last time I checked. And I think one gives you 1 and one gives you 2. And also right now they also do have the guided plus journey for those who are having a little bit of a harder time because of where they're coming from, especially underrepresented community. So you might want to look into that. Their deadline will be coming around in a few months. No time even soon. I don't even think the applications are open yet, but definitely something to consider. All right. So we've talked about planning for the costs, and also considering if you need a fee waiver. Different prep course subscriptions will offer you different things, so you can take a look and see what's out there and see if it's something you want. Reddit has a lot of different thoughts about different platforms, but you really have to be relying on your own independent research and figuring out what works best for you, because these are strangers on the internet, so they don't know you. They might have some recommendations, but they might not have the thing that's going to work for you. They might not know what's going to be precisely your path. And you don't want to spend your time in something because people say that it's the best out there and you're like, oh my goodness, this is really not working for me, but they said it was the best. Sometimes you might have to cut your losses, end something early, end a subscription early, change your studying method early, and just determine for yourself, what are your timelines for saying, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. It's time for me to give this thing up. And that being said, even before you sign up for the test per se, you could even consider just utilizing LawHub itself, the LawHub Advantage, because you have all of your prep tests. All of the companies will need you to have a subscription. So why not stop there or start there, right? And you might end up stopping literally right there. So everything you need is right there. They have the videos of different question types. They have their own question labels, different from the other service providers out there. So you're hearing it directly from the source. Some of the videos came from like the Khan Academy, but I'm sure it was like in a very close partnership, because like that was the recommended service through people that had the waiver. But that's just something to consider. And there are also a lot of different forums from these mainstream websites, which you can see without even having a subscription. You might not see all of the details, but you should, for a good chunk of them, be able to at least see some type of synopsis of why one answer is working better than the others, a stimulus recap, things of that nature. So this is what's out there. And a lot of the times, at least for me, although it took me a longer time, most of the time when I get something wrong, I know why it's wrong and why the right answer is right. And a lot of it just comes down to reading properly and clearly identifying why to get rid of the wrong answers and why the right answer works. That is so clear, so straightforward. All right, next thing. I think this might be the last thing. Tutoring. Do you need a tutor? It really depends on your own situation. Tutors can be expensive. And sometimes, depending on these mainstream platforms like Reddit or maybe even Facebook, to link you up with someone that you're seeing a post that they're offering services, it might not work. It could work, it might not work. Then we have the major platforms, and there's a lot of things that goes into how they're putting a price tag on their tutoring, which I'm a tutor. I haven't been able to tutor the LSAT officially yet, but there are some costs that goes along with offering that service in general. And then different sites have different aspects going on with them, so that might be an area where they're recouping costs for other things that they're providing. So that's something there. And Yeah, I think about, why do I want a tutor? Is this the only way to get what I want from a tutor? Like, is getting a tutor the only way I can get what I need, hypothetically, from a tutor? Or is there another way? Maybe formulating your own study group will work for you. Maybe joining a bigger study group will work for you. Sometimes even within those, they also have people that tutor. But don't let people pressure you, of course. And make sure that you really actually connect with people, because it really, really sucks when people really suck you in just for your money, or just for your attention, which, money is a form of getting people's attention. So, or getting attention is a part of making money to some degree, if you think about it. But, just make sure you're not falling for a facade when it comes to selecting a tutor that will work for you, if you decide. But I'd say for a time that you should be able to get by without one. All right. So, actually, I think before I wrap this up, I'm going to talk a little bit about when you might be able to say that I don't need a tutor, or when you should potentially consider getting one after a while. I would say maybe about 3 months. I'd say about 3 months. And this might go to even considering getting a platform subscription too. Maybe if LawHub is, in the worst case scenario, not working enough for your situation. But you might be very, very surprised that you would have enough from it, but I'm telling you, it's definitely possible. So 3 months. Have you been able to consistently stick to your regimen that you set for yourself? That's one question. Are you understanding more as time goes on concretely why you're getting things wrong? Or is it completely out of your mind? You're just like, I don't know, I've just been picking, I gotta choose better next time types of things, which I might have said myself at some point, just because you don't know the right phrasing to say when you're looking at why you got something wrong. And sometimes it might just be like, oh my goodness, I really just literally missed a single word. But we have to figure out a deeper way to get beneath the surface of what's going on with that. So that might be the time to consider getting a tutor after you've been doing this for about 3 months and not seeing any progress. Because I've heard some people say that unless you're in the 160s, you might not want to get a tutor, because a lot of the work is still dependent on you putting in the grinds, putting in the consistent effort regularly to see the movement that you're looking for. Because a tutor is still going to be telling you, oh, you have to drill, you have to do this, you have to blind review, things of that nature. And if you're not doing your end of the bargain, then you've done yourself a disservice and you've put yourself potentially in unnecessary debt, because if you weren't going to listen to the promptings of a tutor, why even sign up to have a tutor? Okay, and I think this is good enough. And this has just been some things that I think might be helpful. I am very big on cost efficiency. Hopefully that's the right term to be using. But whenever you can save money, save your time, invest your time wisely, I think it's really good. And don't let anyone else determine for you how you should do things. You know, you can take advice to some degree, but really be driven by your own internal compass. And that's it for Unlock the LSAT today. Have a great one.